Reopening of schools update, Ms. Snead-Johnson.
Yes. Last week, we did come together to talk about reopening schools, and I did present a health and safety plan, and I felt like it was well received. One part that we had to continue discussion about was the masking option. That was in my health and safety plan, and that was some discussion. And then later on in the week, we received a public health order from the Public Health Commissioner that masking was now needed because of a public health consideration for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I've given all of you a copy of that order. I've provided you some updates with information about the numbers of COVID vaccinations and COVID in our community. I have reached out to Dr. Morrow, who says she would be glad to speak to us as a board and to discuss health mitigation strategies, or individual board members. But I do believe our plan is solid. It worked last year. Everything that we did provide layers of mitigation strategies, and we need to reopen schools on August 25th. We have been told must provide instruction 5 days a week. We've also were told today that there would be very limited expectations for us to close schools, that we should be open as often as possible. There would be no long-term closures approved across the state of Virginia because of the Bill 1303, and that we might have to do different things, like if we needed to close a classroom, things like that. So it's pretty clear that we will provide instruction 5 days a week, because it is our expectation that we provide the students that learning they need from last school year that was lost. So this is my plan, and I guess the next order of business is to hear any questions about my plan, or what your thoughts are in regards to the public health emergency order.
I've got one question about the order. I know Senate Bill 1303, which was the previous law we were faced with interpreting. Yes, interpreting. Yes. Is there a sunset on this public health order? I don't know what the law prescribes when it comes to public health orders. Well, is it open-ended?
Yeah. This order shall be effective August 12th, 2021, and shall remain in full force and effect until the CDC guidelines for K through 12 schools change, unless this order is sooner amended or rescinded. Is on the last page with the signature of the Health Commissioner, Dr. Oliver. So it is effective for the current
until further notice is essentially what they're saying.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I have a question here.
Yeah.
The very last item on here says that are masks required for school board and PTA meetings, and it says that they are. Are we complying with that?
It depends if it's in a school building. Is that what you just mentioned? If it's in a school building, masking is required.
Only if it's in a school building. Okay.
Yes, in a school building. In this instance tonight, we're not in a school building. I think I did have a mask on it first, but anyway, I think it's something we need to consider long term as how we will proceed with these meetings. But it's not required in this venue.
The FAQ in that regard, and that's what I just asked you before we started, the FAQ is...
And I just provided that to you, just came out today.
The FAQ is poorly worded at best in regard to that, because I think a reasonable person could glance at that sentence and take it either way. But if that's what you just said, sort of reflects the latest of what we've been passed down from the video.
Yes, no, that's what we've been told today. There may be something different tomorrow. That's how the pandemic has been going. We get one thing, the next day we might hear something, but that's what I believe as of today.
Who generated this FAQ document?
That came from the Virginia Department of Education in conjunction with the Virginia Department of Health, and I can from the VDOE this afternoon as some information that we were given about slide presentations that we heard today. The superintendent's across the state of Virginia. I met with Dr. Lane by Zoom, and we were given some information on how to proceed, and we were privy to some presentations by Dr. Forlano and Dr. Peak from the Virginia Department of Health, from the UVA team that's modeling and trying to predict what the COVID is going to do in our community. So we had an hour-long presentation, and then we had follow-up information this afternoon.
Any additional questions or discussion on the order or the FAQ?
Sounds like to me this is sort of doing exactly what we thought 1303 was doing, which is slaving Virginia law to Centers for Disease Control guidance, which I still think is problematic from a governmental standpoint. I think it's a poor way to legislate, if I'm honest. That being said, I'd be interested in hearing what anybody else thinks.
Obviously, you have two sides to this argument as far as, mask, no mask, et cetera. And I'm sure that, there's 50% of the people that will disagree with my opinion as well. So I'm not here to discuss the politics of it. I'm just going to point out that you will have that population that want to ask the questions about the exemptions. And how they kind of explain this in the breakdown, it appears that there are religious exemptions and medical exemptions, and about documentation. And it leaves it up to the school division, the local school division, to develop their own process for applications for religious exemption in consultation with their legal counsel. So I know there's a draft or an example of a exemption form. It appears kind of lengthy, but do you have any other ideas as far as what we might present for those individuals that are requesting exemptions?
I have talked to a couple of school superintendents across this part of the state, and that is a form from one of the divisions who did make that in consultation with his legal counsel. I've talked to a couple other superintendents that just are going to require something on a doctor's note, a prescription pad that says that's what a student needs. We have not had time to make a decision.
Right.
We do know we have to comply with that, and we will. And I have actually sent something to our legal attorney firm to ask them if they have any suggestions on how we proceed.
And that's good, and I'm not trying to make it any more difficult, but the verbiage in the announcement, the order, says may request a reasonable accommodation.
Right.
Does that mean changes in social, physical distancing, et cetera, size of classroom, or number of students per classroom, that kind of thing?
All those things, once we get a request from an individual, we would have to look at what accommodations are needed. Last year we did things like face shields for some of the families that didn't want to wear a mask. Accommodations can be more distancing in the classroom from that student and the others. It's just on a case-by-case basis, we would have to come up with an accommodation to meet the needs of that child, plus provide the required instruction that we're being asked to do.
The plan already has in place 3 feet distancing, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from a distancing perspective, we're already there.
We are.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. For the most part, there's still some very small classrooms, but we're doing 3 feet at the most practical extent that we can. And we are expecting full classrooms, so we will do our best with providing that social distance thing required.
I also like the way you've developed the tiers. Of course, tier 1, I think we're 3 feet, but then as you go into tier 2 and 3, if there are, seeing an increase in infection, or that you've laid it out pretty well, how to move on to the next tier so that we can still stay in school. So that was done very well.
Thank you.
Kind of piggybacking on Bert's question, comments, given that the state is basically either giving us the privilege or the task, depending on how you look at it, of developing our own protocols or procedures as far as the exemptions go. If we approve your plan that includes universal masking, and we're going to comply with that public health order to allow the exemptions, do you have an idea or a start date when families could begin to take that paperwork home?
I would hope to have it by the beginning of the week, which is next Monday.
Because I'm sympathetic to the fact, I mean, we're in a little bit of a fortunate situation being a small division. So presumably the amount of paperwork and requests that a smaller division would have would be statistically lower than a large division. But I just wonder if this is not sort of a unfunded requirement mandate that we've been sort of handed, even in a division that, you know, wants to comply, believes that this is all above board in the way laws should be made. I still think it's at least somewhat problematic for school staff to be able to perhaps efficiently process these. And again, it's the guidance there from the fact sheet here is basically figure it out, guys. So that's a little bit of an issue, I think, for me.
Does VHSL have any guidance? It mentions sports in here as far as indoor school grounds, indoor athletic competitions, but not outdoors on school grounds. And it mentions spectators, that they should continue to follow applicable mask guidance. Should. And there's the word recommend in there as well. So that kind of is similar to your local and state buildings right now as well. We recommend.
Right. The VHSL says it's up to each locality, just as this document has said, to make the decision and to work with teams that you will be playing with and have guidance for your athletes. I've had conversations with Mr. Cantrell, principal, and an AD, Mr. Coach Jones, and we have come up with a plan. We do start indoor volleyball on Monday, have our first game then, and we have a plan for spectators. There's no limit this year on spectators. If the mask mandate, and it is passed in this order and passed by us, it will be the expectation of spectators to wear a mask inside the building. The players will not wear a mask when they're on the court, but when they're sitting on the sidelines, we will ask them to keep their mask on. We've heard that's what's happening with other individual teams across this part of the state. Outdoors, there is no reason for our players to wear anything outside, or the spectators. So again, it's up to local decision-making processes, and we are working towards that goal. And there's no limit on spectators this year. Last year there was spectator limits. There's no spectator limits this year. We're still going to live stream every event, indoor and outdoor, in case there are families that might be concerned about a grandparent coming to watch a game. So live streaming will happen again this school year.
And that service
was very
good. Good thing to have last year. So, and we actually had that discussion that we would be able to continue to use that even after restrictions were lifted.
Yes.
And a lot of that equipment we received for little to no cost.
Yes.
Would that still be through the NFHS that you used last year?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.